The Fed actually doesn't control interest rates at all. It's all sentiment, tone, and actual language that's used in the Fed meeting.
I just think it's interesting that our whole market can be held up by a tone, how they present information. You still will sell houses. You're going to have to be a lot more intentional about what you're doing on a daily basis to get those houses sold. They're not just falling in your lap right now. You got to go out and kill it and drag it home. Take this time to build the net so that when it's time, when there are fish, you can catch more of them.
It's a very, very polarizing election. There could be some economy fallout, businesses that are impacted, and it could create a situation where it might be risky for you to take out a mortgage right now. If you're just basing it on interest rates, there's zero reason to wait for interest rates to go down if one party gets elected or interest rates to go up if the other party gets elected. It doesn't make any sense to me. You have a lot of agents that don't treat this as a career profession.
Sometimes you're dealing with agents on the other side that know nothing.
Commissions are going to get worse before they get better. Every 1% interest rate drops, 500,000 more people enter the market.
Okay, I'm going to use a word that I hate, but the last 2 years in the real estate market has been unprecedented.
Unprecedented.
It's been unprecedented. And we need to talk about what's coming, right? And we've had some back and forth and some up and down. It's been a roller coaster of real estate in the last couple of years, 3 years, really. And let's talk about what's coming in 2025. All right, so, and I will say this year so far has been really unpredictable. What I thought was going to happen this year and what actually happened, it's two different things. And so whatever predictions we're making today could be completely wrong, but I think we have a little bit better sense of what's going on in the marketplace. But we've never seen anything like this in the course of history in terms of people being locked in their homes and then just basically what that did in terms of, putting the real estate market, on a roller coaster. But what happened in 2024 is we started the year and they go, all right, here's what's going to happen. Fed's like, we're going to start dropping things, right? Interest rates are going to go down. We're going to do how many dates, like 4 or 5 drops, something like that. But I think what I wanted to ask you, and a lot of people have trouble understanding, is how interest rates are affected by the Fed decisions, because there's something called basis points, right? And then interest rates are reflect that, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going down. So can you explain that?
Yeah, so
corollary.
The Fed actually doesn't control interest rates at all.
Okay.
So what decisions they make have a direct correlation on the mortgage interest rate market, but they do not themselves control interest rates. So when we say the Fed is going to make a cut to interest rates, that does not mean a cut to mortgage rates. It's not the same thing.
Okay.
So when they cut interest rates, it maybe incentivizes a bank to go out and lend money to someone else at a lower rate than they had to before to make more money than they could if it was just sitting in the bank.
Right.
So like if a bank keeps more of their cash, they get paid a certain interest rate for it. If they lend it out, they get paid a different interest rate based on the relationship they have with that particular client. And if interest rates are now lower, then they are able to loan out money at a lower rate. So it does correlate, but it's not the same thing. So for instance, let's say we have today's the 18th. So today's the day where the Fed's meeting.
Right.
And let's say they do a 25 basis point interest rate cut. Well, a 25 basis point interest rate cut's been built into interest rates for the last 3 weeks. Yeah. So if they just did a 25 basis point cut, you could actually see interest rates go up in the mortgage space.
Interesting.
You could. I'm not saying they will or won't, but you could. Because people could say, well, I heard Jerome Powell say this during the Fed talk, and I don't know if we're going to get a 50 basis point cut next time. So I'm actually going to tick up interest rates for now because my 25 basis point cut was already priced into the market. Or you could have some people saying, I thought it might be 50 basis points cut. It was only 25. So now interest rates are going to go up. So we don't really know exactly what's going to happen. It's all sentiment and tone and actual language that's used in the Fed meeting. But just because they cut 25 basis points does not equal a 25 basis point lower mortgage rate. That's not how it works.
Right. I just think it's interesting that our whole market can be held up by a tone, right? By somebody's how they present information.
Yes.
It's fascinating to me.
It can very much be.
So anyway, but as we, and then the other thing that we're dealing with currently to wrap up 2024 is we've got an election, which you were telling me about statistically something about election years.
Well, everybody says, we're going into an election year, so interest rates are going to go down. And that's not always true. Sometimes they go down. But if you look at, the history of every election back to 1960 or whatever, we have a mixture of rates going up into the election and rates going down into the election. And it's never that drastic. It's never so drastic that I would recommend anyone waiting, to figure out what happens with the election. Now, it's a very, very polarizing election. Maybe one of the most polarizing elections in history.
Right.
And so there could be some economy fallout. There could be some businesses that are impacted, and it could create a situation where it might be risky for you to take out a mortgage right now. Mm-hmm. And so that's a decision that only you can make with you and your family. But I don't think if you're just basing it on interest rates, there's zero reason to wait for interest rates to go down if one party gets elected or interest rates to go up if the other party gets elected. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Right. So, and that brings us to 2025 and what we think will happen. Now, look, you're right. It is a polarizing election, largely, and everything sort of can kind of get tied together here, and I understand that. But what I see, if I'm stepping back from it, stepping back from elections and the whole thing, and just talking about the housing market, what I think we are seeing is we had this massive pendulum swing back and forth based on what happened during COVID, which we had just super low interest rates, and people locked in their houses where they're like, I got to get out of here. I might as well get an awesome house for a super low interest rate. I can cash out a bunch of equity of my home. And so that, I think, the pendulum has swung the other way. We've had a really quiet summer market, which was a little surprising because at the beginning of the year, we were really starting to see some movement. Then it really started quieted down. But anyway, you've got this pendulum swing back and forth. And what I think is happening is we're coming a little more to center in terms of just a standard real estate market, right? That's seasonal based on time of year. It's going to be slow in the winter months. It'll be slow when school starts. But generally speaking, the market's going to start moving again is my thought. And also for first-time home buyers, I think they're going to start making up a larger portion of the market because rents are starting to increase. And so they're thinking hey, I need to get a house. I need to stop paying rent. But I want to talk about the amount of equity people have in their house and also COVID, right? And that low interest rates and how people kind of feel stuck.
Yeah.
Some people feel stuck.
Yeah. So going back really quick before
Sure.
I answer that is one thing that all this talk about interest rates cut, one thing it does is it brings more interest back into the market. Because before everybody only knew hey, interest rates are really high.
Right.
So, and that's all they knew. They don't know 7 from 6 or 5 or whatever.
That's right.
They just know interest rates are high. And so as the media is talking about interest rates cuts, even if it doesn't correlate to an exact amount of cut, they're seeing positivity in the market. And so with positivity in the market, they're like, I want to jump back in. So that's good. And then, kind of back to the stabilization of the market, the first-time home buyers, equity, and COVID, at one point, we had 75% of the people out there had more than 50% equity in their homes. Mm-hmm. So, and people these days, it's not like when our grandparents bought, where you buy a house and you stay in it for 60 years. Mm-mm. People buy houses and they move jobs a lot more frequently, which means you got to move closer to your job. Kids move schools a lot more now because they put them in private schools, at least in our market. Do this, do that. And so they're moving to be closer to schools and all these things. And so people want to use that equity, right? Mm-hmm. And a lot of people think of home equity as a vehicle of net worth. Sure. So they're like, hey, I've got 50% equity in my home. Now I want to put it in this more expensive home that's going to appreciate at this rate. And so you have a lot of people who bought during COVID at a 2.25 interest rate or 2.5 or 3. And they're like, right now I can't sell this house and buy a house with all this equity and go to a 6 or 7, but maybe I could at a 4.5 or 5. Mm-hmm. And so the closer that gap becomes, the more people you'll have entering the market.
Yeah, I agree.
And here's another statistic that might blow your mind. Every 1% interest rate drops, 500,000 more people enter the market. 500,000 more people could buy.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. And that can massively affect a marketplace.
Massively affect.
Yeah. And the other thing is like, I think about all of this, and home values generally, okay, and these are big picture things, generally have increased, although we see some softening in the upper parts of home values, where maybe houses aren't selling for what they were 2 years ago in certain price ranges. But in, general price ranges, house prices are going up, and new home construction doesn't really feel like it's slowed down at all.
Yeah. And I think people got spoiled by the appreciation that did happen during COVID, because prices have softened, but mainly because people priced it at such a point where the appreciation had kind of outlived what was reality. So they were like, hey, I'm going to price it at $2 million. In reality, it's worth 1.7, but they still only paid 1.5 for it. Right. So they still got, whatever percentage appreciation, but they really wanted that COVID level appreciation that just doesn't happen. So they softened their prices, but everybody's still seeing appreciation in our market. There are some markets that are down, but everybody in our market is still seeing some level of appreciation, and it's about on par with historical appreciation, which is great.
No, it is. But do you think, like on the new home construction thing, do you think we still have a housing shortage, the big picture?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think that's what's driving new home construction sales? Or is it, supply and demand, but I just don't see that that's really slowing down a lot.
Yeah, we still have more demand than can be met, for sure. And our month's supply is not where it needs to be to create a balanced market. So home builders need to pick up the pace. But it's hard for them too. Like when everything's slowed down due to interest rates, they can't pump out, thousands of houses at that moment either, because they're struggling. So it's just one of those things where as we get more towards a balanced market, I feel like, that will be because inventory has picked up.
Right. Okay, so let's kind of switch gears and talk about real estate agents, right? So we're talking about the market, but in terms of real estate agents, because real estate agents have just taken a beating this year from one, which would be like sort of the NAR settlement stuff. That's been a big part of it. The other thing is just real estate agents. It's not 2021 anymore, where you've got just all you have to do is grab a license and you're selling 5 houses a year or 10 houses a year. So things have changed and you really have to work. Do you think agent numbers will decrease?
Yeah, before they increase. Yeah.
Okay. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better in terms of agent numbers.
No question.
But by the way, like it doesn't really bother me for agents because to me, it feels like it got a little oversaturated, right? So it doesn't bother me necessarily for agents to leave the marketplace. But yeah, I think it's going to go down before it goes back up again.
Yeah. I kind of said this on another podcast. I can't remember if we were doing a live or a podcast, and I think people perceived it as like very negative in nature. And that wasn't the way I intended it. But to me, it's like you have a lot of agents that don't treat this as a career profession because they entered the market during COVID. It was much easier to sell homes. They had much more friends and family buying and selling. And so it wasn't something, it was like a career. It was something that was temporary in nature that they could make a few dollars from. And those agents with the NAR, paired with the NAR settlement, are going to wash out. And I felt okay about it. And I think that was what was perceived as kind of negative, is like, you're okay with agents washing out. Why? Well, because to me, like going forward, you have to treat this as a profession, as a career, and you have to be a professional agent. And that's the kind of agent we want to elevate the idea of a real estate agent, because they provide more value than just opening doors and writing contracts. Yeah. And to do that, the whole profession has to treat it that way. Yeah. And so if they wash out, then we have more professional agents in nature, and I think that's positive for the whole real estate industry.
Yeah, it's not that you're saying like, hey, I want agents to fail. It's more just like there's just a natural give and take in terms of like a market shift, and you want, especially like now in this world. And by the way, real estate contracts, real estate negotiation, it's relatively complicated. And so you need professionals handling these deals. One of the things that is frustrating about real estate, generally speaking, as an agent, is sometimes you're dealing with agents on the other side that know nothing.
Yeah. And here's the other thing too. Commissions are going to get worse before they get better. Yeah, more people are going to try to not offer a buyer agent commission or try to lower the commission to see if the house will still sell. And that's going to be tried for 6 more months, maybe more, but 6 more months at least where people are feeling it out. And then they're going to come back to the realization that, hey, there's a reason for cooperative compensation.
That's right.
That's the way the industry likes it to work, and it benefits, both sides. When you sell, then you go back to buy, and it's going to work it out on that side. And so, I think that commissions will go down, below that 2.45 number that they've been for so long, go down further, and then drift back up. And so agents will exit the market then too. Like as the commissions go down, they'll go out of business or quit their career, and then it'll come back up.
Right. So the question becomes like, what should agents be doing right now? While, we're in this sort of interim market, we're going to have, I think 2025 will be strong. I think it'll be strong regardless of who goes into office. So I'm optimistic about 2025. I'm optimistic about, movement of property and just the real estate interest rates, things like that. But we've got this window, right, of time where it's like, okay, well, things aren't going gangbusters right now. Would you agree with that?
No. Yes, I would agree with that. Yeah. No, they're not going gangbusters.
They're not going gangbusters.
Yes, I agree with that.
And so a lot of the time that you would have, that you would be sort of tied up in showings and, all of that stuff, sort of the customer service part of this business, take the time now, right? Which, by the way, that doesn't mean you can't sell houses. You still will sell houses, but you're going to have to be a lot more intentional about what you're doing on a daily basis to get those houses sold. They're not just falling in your lap right now. You got to go out and kill it and drag it home. So the things that you need to be putting in place, right, are the business structures that are going to enable scalable success when the market takes off. And I think of it like you're building a net, right? Take this time to build the net so that when it's time, like when there are fish in the water, right? Yeah. You can catch more of them.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, it's just, but yeah, one of them is like establishing, we just got out of a 6-figure school class where we were talking about social media. Like, go ahead and one of the first things that we have them do during their homework is like, I just want you to post every week, or every day rather, for a week until we meet next week. And I don't care if it's personal, I don't care if it's business. I just want you to post something every day.
Just get in the rhythm. Yeah.
Right. And the idea there is that you're getting in a habitual rhythm of marketing. Okay. Same thing and this is one that just, it astounds me that people don't incorporate email marketing, which is still the number one marketing tool. And you can stay top of mind through email marketing and establish consistency with your client database.
Yeah. Ricky Carruth builds his business on the back of email marketing.
Yeah. And so it's like, well, get in a habitual rhythm of, hey, what am I going to do every single week, right? If you've heard us talk about before, it's like first week is community events, second week is market update, third week is restaurant of the month, fourth week is small business of the month, right? Just get in that rhythm, and that's a solid business structure that will keep you top of mind and keep your business growing.
Yeah.
Okay. Getting your time management, in line. Right? Making sure that you've got time set aside every day for business development, lead generation, for problem solving, and for appointments, right? Start to build that out so you're not reactive. And your lead generation habits. And here's what, like right now, I think with lead generation, you're going to be working real hard, right, on your lead generation / business development to get clients. Okay. But there's a compounding effect to that.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to say, like when you're saving money, and you're putting it in the stock market or any sort of growth stock mutual fund or whatever, right? The first part of it is really, really hard, right? But then it starts to grow, right? You've got a compounding effect because that money starts to make money.
Yep.
The same thing will happen with your lead generation habits. If you continue to do them, there's a compounding effect to that. All of your customer service, your buyer seller guides, what does your buyer consultation look like? Do you have a structure for it?
More important than ever now, by the way.
Yeah, especially with, all of this.
It's always been important, but now it's more important.
Yeah, buyer agent compensation and all that stuff. So what does that look like? Do you have that dialed in? Do you have the conversation dialed in? Do you have a packet to take to clients when you're meeting with them for the first time to get that buyer's agreement signed? And then the other one is, hey, all of this, like in 6-figure school, we teach you how to do all of these things, right? To build that structure of your business. So reach out to us. You'll put something in the show notes, I guess, for a discovery call, but we'd love to have you in 6-figure school because we take you through all the ways to build out the business structure. It's a great time to build a foundation underneath you.
Yeah. Barbara Corcoran, who's a brilliant businesswoman, she puts out a lot of stuff I agree with and a lot of stuff that I don't.
Same.
This one I happen to agree with. She thinks the threshold's 6%. She thinks 5.99, you have a flood of people going back into the market. And I happen to agree with her. I think anytime I come to someone, and I have in the past 30 days with on the mortgage side with a 5 something rate, they are blown away that they have the capability to get that in the market right now.
Yeah.
And I think as we drift below 6 into the mid 5s, I think you have a lot of people who are ready to pull the trigger, who have seen 6 and 7s, and I've seen some 8s, which is crazy.
Man.
6 and 7s and 8s. I can't believe someone put them in an 8 really though, but
yeah.
I've seen some of those in the marketplace. And if you tell somebody who has a high 7s rate that they could get a mid 5 rate, they are jumping on it. And so people think it's impossible to buy right now. People still think of those 7 rates when they think elevated rates. So I think as we drift below 6, it's gonna open the floodgates.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, again, my advice to you would be get the structure built, get the foundation built, build the net, right, so that you can catch it. Because it is coming. And again, would you agree that it's coming regardless of the election?
Yeah, I don't think the election has near as much bearing on it as just the slow drift of interest rates down. And I do not think that they will fall off a cliff. So if you find the house you need right now, it's still a good time to buy. I do not think the rates do this. I think they just do this.
I agree.
Over time, they'll come down and you'll have an opportunity to refinance. And so if you find the house you need right now or you need to move right now, it's not a bad time. It's very, very, very difficult to time the market. It is almost impossible to do that. You're almost always going to lose trying to do that. You might as well, if you need to move. If you don't, wait.
Yeah. As always, guys, take time to like, subscribe. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you next week. Bye.
Bye.